All right, so in today's video, I want to discuss three major problems that people face when they set out to stop consuming cannabis, but you could really apply the content in today's video to any number of substances: cannabis, alcohol, nicotine, tobacco products, whatever it may be. Now, a lot of people, when they set out to quit a substance, are under the impression that their problem is their environment, their self-sabotaging behavior, a history of trauma. A lot of people are also under the impression that they're powerless, broken, and diseased for the rest of their life because they're struggling with a substance use disorder. And after 7 years of, coaching people one-on-one and helping them overcome substance use, and struggling for myself with 9 years of pretty heavy substance use to cannabis, nicotine, stimulants, binge drinking, and adult media content, I can tell you those are the wrong problems to focus on because they don't actually play as big of a factor as you may think when it comes to quitting substances. And if you don't identify the correct problem, it becomes very, very hard to come up with the right solutions. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the top 3 problems, which are rooted in your perception or your beliefs. There's problem number 2, which is fear-based. And then problem number 3 is understanding physical and psychological dependency to the substance. So we're going to break each of those down in today's video. And listen, really understanding this can go an incredibly long way for you. Just like it did for this person here, who we successfully helped quit using cannabis products, or just like we did for this person here, who has successfully stopped the use of nicotine-containing products and cannabis products. They're well on their way. If you're new here, my name's Dr. Frank, and we have a science-backed method that has a 98% client success rate at helping people quit nicotine and cannabis in as little as 48 hours, privately without disrupting your public life and image, and we can do it without relapse. This method is designed specifically for high-level professionals and high-performance individuals. I put a link in the video description and the pinned comment where you can learn more about that. Problem number 1 that most people are going to face, and this is probably the biggest issue that I've seen, is rooted in their perception of the drug consumption or in their beliefs surrounding the use of that drug. And most of these beliefs tend to be extremely limiting in nature. So if you go into quitting cannabis, one of the most beneficial things you can do is identify why you enjoy consuming cannabis. What are the reasons that you partake? You believe it leads to stress relief. Maybe you're struggling with nicotine and you think it helps you focus. Maybe you're struggling with alcohol and you think it helps you socialize. Even when we're experiencing disastrous outcomes from our substance use, damage to our relationships, damage to our time with our children and our significant other, damage to our finances, our careers, and our business, damage to our physical health and psychological health, if you have the perception of benefit to continue drug consumption, quitting is going to be extremely challenging because even something that's harming you will still be done repetitively if there is that belief, that perception of benefit. And I know on paper it sounds really, really simple, and in theory it is, right? Like you could take out a sheet of paper and write down, why do I consume cannabis? What do I like about it? But when you're under the constant consumption of a drug, when you're under the fog, the delusion of that drug consumption, it's very, very hard to identify this. I've had a number of clients that we've worked with over the years, and I'll say, why do you consume? And they're like, there's no reason. I despise everything about it. I just can't stop because I'm self-sabotaging, because I'm impulsive, because I'm diseased, powerless, and broken, because that's what AA or MA or NA told me, or the rehab told me. And they have a really hard time identifying the pleasure that they see in that substance use. This makes quitting very difficult. So the first problem to identify is actually rooted in your perception of the substance, which can be hard to do when you're currently under the influence of it. It becomes obvious after you quit for a period of time. And then I'll say too, from a societal standpoint, especially with cannabis and alcohol, and we're even seeing this more now with nicotine-containing products, a lot of these drugs are really in the high life, right? Like, you don't smoke weed, you don't drink alcohol, nicotine is great for you. What do you mean you don't use Zyn all day long, right? Society plays a huge role in this as well to manipulate our perception of a drug, and that's really due to just to ingenious marketing. So problem number 1 is rooted in your beliefs, in your perception. The good news is beliefs can change, and beliefs are extraordinarily powerful. I've said this in other videos. Beliefs are responsible for starting wars. People will die for their beliefs. So when people look at alcohol or cannabis and they say, how does this drug have so much power over me, so much control over me? I always start by telling them it doesn't. It's your series of beliefs that you have surrounding the consumption of that drug that have all the power over you. And that's something that we can change in as little as 48 hours and effectively and rapidly start this quitting process. Problem number 2 that I see is often rooted in fear. And many times it's fear of the unknown. What's my life going to be like without this substance? I've been smoking weed for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, right? It's not uncommon that we see this. I've been drinking 30 beers a day for the last 5 years. And I don't know if my life is actually going to improve or be any better without the use of this drug. Is life more pleasurable? Is it happier? Is it more desirable without the use of this substance? And that creates a lot of fear. It creates a lot of overwhelm. And what happens when people feel fear and overwhelm if they currently have a substance use disorder? How do they manage that? Typically by consuming more of the substance. So the idea of quitting is overwhelming because you have the wrong perception of what that drug is doing for you. And you've managed feelings of overwhelm and fear for the last several years, several months, decades, whatever it may be, by consuming more of the drug, which then leads to negative consequences, which then increases a person's stress. How do they manage stress? More drug consumption. How am I ever going to manage all these problems without the drug? So I just consume more of it. This is very much the cycle that people get stuck in. And I have 2 things on fear that I tell people. I say, 1, think of fear, the acronym, false expectations appearing real. People often go into this with the wrong set of expectations. And because they have the wrong set of expectations, they'll get paralyzed by fear. They won't make a change because change is overwhelming. Secondly, fear is not fact, but we treat it like it is. We treat fear as a factual thing. Fear is just a thought. It's a story that you tell yourself. And it's a story that you can rewrite. In this opportunity right now, if you've been thinking about quitting cannabis, nicotine, alcohol, whatever it is, you can build a significant amount of courage and confidence. This, quitting, is an opportunity to build courage and confidence. And that courage and confidence can be applied to your relationships. It can be applied to your career, to your business to drive higher income. It can be applied to your mental health and your physical health. Having courage, having confidence is taking action despite being fearful, right? I don't get courage from going out and doing something that I wasn't afraid to do. Courage and confidence comes from achieving something that I was scared to do, that I once had the perception of being impossible. This is where we get the unlock in clients that we've worked with over the years, and how you see incredible things like this, people radically changing their lives after quitting a substance because of the character traits they can gain back. And again, if that appeals to you, we have a science-backed method that has a 98% client success rate at helping people quit substances in as little as 48 hours, privately, without ongoing meetings, without a public display of your substance use, and we can do it without relapse. It's for executives, it's for physicians, attorneys, real estate professionals. I put a link for that in the video description and the pinned comment. Now, problem number 3, and this one can be a little tricky, is the physical and psychological dependency to the substance. So the most common example of this would be someone who's addicted to alcohol and they've become physically dependent upon alcohol. And if they stop consuming it, they're at a risk of experiencing the DTs, delirium tremors, and the risk of seizure is super, super high. And this can become a life-threatening situation for that person. So physical dependency, benzos, drugs like that, can be a huge barrier to a person stopping. And I see this all the time, especially for people who do have more of a public reputation. Maybe you're a doctor in your community, you're an attorney in your community, and you don't want to go to like the hospital to detox. You don't want to go to a public setting to detox where it's all going to be recorded. And this stigma, this concern is a huge barrier for people to stop, because in these instances, people need medical attention to come away from these substances. So that's a true physical dependency to a drug. The person cannot operate without it, and they need a medically managed detox, something that we can help you guys coordinate. We have physicians that we work with who do this at home for people if you're interested, okay? Now, the other physical dependency that you see, especially with cannabis, is like the person can't eat food without it. And when they quit, they have no appetite, and now they're at risk of malnutrition. They can't sleep without it, and the person has been awake for 2-3 days, and now their risk of psychosis or psychotic behavior starts to go up. You may see this with other substances. A person can't socialize without cannabis. They can't interact without nicotine, or they get anxiety and panic attacks when they don't have it. I've seen all these things over the years, and I've experienced them, many of them myself, as someone who struggled with substance use. but understanding the biology, the neurochemistry of what's occurring in your body and how to correct that, either medicated, supplemental, or lifestyle changes, can go a really, really long way. And just gaining a basic understanding of why you feel the way you feel can ease a lot of tension, a lot of concern, and a lot of fear. I wish that's what I had when I was struggling. Someone to say, this is normal, this isn't normal, we need to manage this differently, we don't need to worry about this. I didn't have that when I quit, and that's why I developed it for you guys in our protocol, in our addiction exit protocol. But I'll tell you, like, just the amount of relief that can provide a person when you set proper expectations, when you provide them with knowledge and education, can go a really long way. It makes this quitting process significantly easier and significantly less scary. Because again, quitting, when you have a physiological or psychological dependency to a drug, can be very scary. Now I'll say, because we're talking about cannabis specifically, I think this is one of the hardest physical dependencies to break, just because of the duration of time that THC or cannabis stays saturated in your fat cells. So the detox process can, for some people, be a very, very prolonged process. And then when you take into consideration the fact that your endocannabinoid system regulates so many other systems in your body, right? It plays a role in appetite, it plays a role in sleep, it plays a role in emotional control. Just waiting for that system to heal and rebalance can be very overwhelming for a lot of people. And it can make quitting significantly more challenging than it needs to be if the person doesn't have the right knowledge and the right education to go through it. These are the three biggest barriers that I see people facing. But so many times when people go into quitting drugs, they're not focused on these things. They're not addressing them. They're focused on their environment. They're focused on their peer pressure. They're focused on a history of trauma, or they're focused on, something that at the end of the day isn't going to be super relevant when it comes to stopping the use of a substance. And it results in people just dragging this out for years, if not decades longer than they need to. So if you enjoyed this, I want you to follow me right in the next video, where I actually break down exactly how we worked with a client to come off of binge drinking alcohol and heavy caffeine intake to help them get their life back, to help them get their business back on track and their family and all that stuff. So follow me right into that next video.